Hey everybody, this is Dwight Peters from QuarterWaters.com, the site for social entrepreneurs, where social entrepreneurs come on the program, they talk about the issues they're tackling, the impact they're making, and share helpful business tips along the way. If you're watching this program, it's because you want to change the world. You came to the right spot. Okay, for like the third interview in a row, I must apologize if you see me freeze up in my camera. It's because my computer is running out of memory, and I am going to work on that as soon as possible to get that fixed. So you freeze up again, right? As soon as I said that. But let's jump into this. With us today, I have Stephen King, who is the founder of socialbusiness.org. Social business is a place to find ideas, businesses, and people who are creating positive social change. Their publication, network, and media is dedicated to raising awareness of the social business in our community. Stephen, welcome to the program, man.
Thanks for having me.
No problem, man. Thanks for joining us, man. As I said in the pre-interview, I'm a big fan. I check out socialbusiness.org regularly to see what's going on in the social enterprise community. Now, Steven, let's jump into it. I read that quick little phrase off of your website, but it's more than that. Bring us back to the beginning. One, how did you get started? What was the inspiration for it, and how did it take off? You guys have a large following. How did you guys build that?
Yeah, great. Well, yeah, two good questions. I'll try and keep it as short as possible. You let me know if you want to hear more.
No problem,
Uh,
man. Be as
the
detailed as possible. We actually appreciate detail over here. So go ahead, man.
All right, cool. So how do we get started? I think about a year and a half or so ago, 2 years ago, I came across sort of a growing feeling, really, that there was a, and it's probably been going on for a while, a huge amount of talent out there in the world that doesn't need to sell more Coca-Cola. They could probably be doing other things with their time. And so what we did, myself and a couple other folks, started to get together and figure out what other things, or how could we get a bunch of those people to understand what else they could be doing with their time and the energy. And the online magazine is the first business in that journey that we've been on since about a year and a half ago. So the magazine, in all its sort of fanfare, probably kicked off about a year and a half or so ago in really full force. And the idea in its first instant was pretty simple, which was how do we target the mass market with an online magazine that would give them ideas and inspiration for them to understand what social business is, so they could start their own business. They could potentially help the corporation that they're in get some more social and environmental purpose, I guess I'd call it.
Yeah.
And from these ideas, they could transform and help to make the world a little bit better, rather than just buying or selling more stuff that they're actually up to. So the magazine, as I said, about a year and a half ago, we got up and running. We started off with a really good first move, which was to partner with a much bigger website called trendhunter.com,
Yeah.
which in hindsight is probably a model that I believe in quite a bit for the marketplace of social businesses. It was just finding a way to leverage the resources, at least in the first instance, of bigger companies that might be targeted, mass market, but in a different way. And we leverage their engine. We are fortunate, they get 36, 37 million views a month, and so we piggyback off the back of that in a big way. And through that, we've grown quickly. We've profiled now over 1,000 businesses around the globe across industry.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, it's a good place to find the cutting edge of what's going on in the social enterprise market.
So let's take a step back, though. You talk about leveraging, off uh, of the, well, you could say the community of Tread Hunter. But you made it sound too easy. How did you get that relationship established? It's Jeremy, right? Jeremy's the founder of Tread Hunter. How did you guys get that going?
Yeah, that's maybe not as interesting, only because Jeremy and I used to work together.
All right.
But yeah, so we work together. We know each other, and he had left in 2008 to do full-time Trend Hunter, and then from that time we had stayed friends. And I was in Toronto having dinner with him and discussing this idea of what my future career and space wanted to be. And he said, well, why don't we do that together? So in the first instance, the magazine became a section of what people go out there to search for in terms of trends. And I think we both share the belief that this is a trend in some sense. Hopefully, it will last forever. It won't go out of style. But it's something that's happening, maybe as big or bigger than the technology trend over the last 20 or 30 years. But we will see the environmental and social parts of society become a much bigger place in the business world, for the sake of the consumers choosing differently between products because of social environmental needs, which I think is in some sectors already well established. Fair trade coffee, fair trade chocolate. Some of that stuff is becoming more and more prevalent these days. Yeah. But I think also for employees coming out of, or I guess students at this stage coming out of university, are putting things like the ethics and the transparency of their company higher and higher in the choice. So it seems like it's going to be a long journey, 50 years, maybe more, but it won't be a choice, I don't think, come that time, whether or not a company has to act ethically or transparently. So I think that was another reason why Jeremy was pretty interested in being part of the journey, because he could see it not only being as a good thing to do, but also a good business decision to get involved in something like this.
So as we watch social entrepreneurship, or building social enterprise, as a trend, what you're saying is that initially this will become a staple of our society, of at least our business culture. That it's not going to be a choice of should a business do good, but it's going to be a part of their DNA. It's going to be embedded in that, which we truly believe here. But for you personally, Stephen, why this? You didn't have to get into this. You could have stuck around for, and play around in big corporations or what have you. Why this? What was your personal pain point to bring you to the business model of doing good?
Yeah, it's a great question. And like all these switches, or I call jumps, leaps of faith maybe, or jumps from one world to another. Yeah. Just like everyone's first as a small child jumping off a 10-meter platform or something into the water, there's that moment of, should I really do this or not? I think there was a little bit of, even if, as I came across the idea and the instinct and the intuition of this could exist, because I think 10 years ago this didn't exist nearly as well. So I think there's a timing aspect to this, is definitely one point. So I think there's a timing bit. There's maybe a bit of a life stage bit. I call it like an early midlife crisis maybe. And then I think there's also a feeling of knowing where you could get the most leverage, or when you could, or how you could impact the most change. So the timing bit is 10 years ago, this industry didn't really exist the way it does today. So it was much more charity or business. And so in some ways, we have the silver lining maybe of the financial crisis and some of the economic times is that people are now searching and realize that there needs to be another model.
Yeah.
I'm currently based in the UK. We've had the rainiest and the coldest summer in history. People are starting to realize that this just isn't a fluke anymore. And you based in New York, you've had the warmest summer, on record. Yeah. So people realizing, and they're waking up to this idea. So that's bad, but good in the sense that this is now showing that there needs to be more resources towards us. There needs to be more talent. So there's that. And I think from an impact standpoint, working within the company I worked in, which was, a Fortune 50, consumer finance company, big place. Yeah. We definitely could have made change. I could have made change within that organization to make it better. But moving outside of that and affecting the masses, working with small businesses, which we work with quite a bit, social enterprises, but small businesses to help them get scale and disrupt the market, I think that will have broader, wide-reaching change. The early midlife crisis bit, I think, is, well, that was pretty comfortable what you're doing. You have this Ivy League education. Why bother go and disrupt all that fun? Paradoxically, it probably was actually having a kid. So my partner and I, we had a baby boy about 11 months ago, and I think in some ways it becomes quite a strong device, really, to get you to question, why are you doing what you're doing?
Yeah.
Can you tell your kids that what you're doing every day is really helping? And I think that's an interesting thread that I hear more and more people talk about, either as young kids or teenagers. They're starting to question what their parents are doing. So we'll see it as an interesting push, I think, that CEOs of very large companies, shareholders are going to question, their consumers will question, their employees might question what they're up to. But interestingly enough, it might be their kids that really get them to start thinking differently about the work that they're doing and why they're doing it. And that's not a one or two thing. I think it's been a quite common thing that CEOs are saying that's the thing that broke them in terms of, hey, maybe I should be doing something different with all this power I have being in charge of this big company.
Awesome, man. All right, so in the pre-interview, we talked a little bit about the challenges that you faced with social business. Presumably, can you share that with our viewers? What has been, some of the hurdles that you guys had to overcome in delivering this great content?
Yeah, definitely. As your viewers of your site are hopefully also fans of socialbusiness.org on our Facebook pages and follow us on Twitter, we've grown in scale quite quickly. And, we have a ton of content. Online magazines and content-driven portals rely a ton on advertising revenue as their main source. Otherwise, they go to content delivery mechanism, publishing, making books, or making reports or something. I think a lot of that market has fallen away in recent times. So the advertising revenue side and some of the areas. So I think that's probably the biggest challenge. I think the upside has been that we've been able to grow quickly. We can get a lot of writers very, very quickly because, much like what I was talking about with employees, everyone wants to do this. If you can get paid to do it, just writing for
the best.
If you can get paid to do this and do good, I mean, it attracts people quite easily. So I think the future funding of the business and the way that it operates, in order for it to get much, much bigger, I think we'll have to rely on some more creative ways to get the revenue in beyond the advertising. And as I hinted at, I think two of the avenues we're in the midst of figuring out how to write a book, which we're profiling women social entrepreneurs around the world, because we think that's an interesting space for two reasons. Social entrepreneurship and social business, I think, is a great emerging space, as we already talked about.
Yeah.
But I think women more and more will be the leaders of the future in our economy. So I think the two in combo have some very, very unique, cool, interesting stories. I'm sure you'll have many more women on your website as well. And they're making great businesses. So that's one area I'm publishing, and then the other is in reports. I think we have a ton of information on our website,
Yeah.
and more we'll see. Big companies trying to pick up this information as a resource, as a tool for inspiration, for them to generate their own business ideas, new products and services. So we're interested in both of those.
Over 1,000 social enterprises or social companies, or rather social entrepreneurs, profiled. A few questions. Which one gets you excited? Which social entrepreneurs currently get you excited with the work that they're doing?
Yeah, it's another good question. Probably a smattering of them. Just trying to think of a couple off the top of my head. I mean, there's a couple classics, So Blake over at Tom's Shoes, who I'm sure you're aware of, he does some amazing stuff. I think he's revolutionized the model in a couple ways. I wrote a bit of an editorial piece on the company a month or so ago. And the reason why I find him so interesting is not only has he got a great business and he's done very well from a marketing standpoint, but I think the reason why I like him in particular is because he's trailblazed and actually is a leader that other people have followed. So the number of one-to-one businesses or one-for-one businesses that have now followed because of him are amazing. And so I think he doesn't deserve all the credit for that, because there are older one-to-one businesses or one-for-one businesses, but he's just led now and inspired a huge group of people that have made that happen. So he's definitely great. I'm really loving the journey that the Unreasonable Institute is on.
Yeah.
Also an American, out in Colorado there, Boulder. They've only started really in earnest probably about 3 years ago, and already they've built up such an amazing track record. So I think that's great to see, and that's amazing. Let me just think of other sort of standouts. I also have a bit of a soft spot for some of the old school ones. So I don't know if you've heard of, over in India, Aravind Eye Institute. If you should track them down. They're really good, interesting to see. They're interesting in a bunch of ways, and I think this is what also attracts me to Tom's and Unreasonable Institute in a similar fashion, is that these companies are doing good.
Uh-huh.
Obviously, and what their purpose is and their social mission, but they're also great businesses. So they're not messing around. They're not trying to, desperately make ends meet because they can't get enough charity funding or donations. They're a proper business. They're running with all the, the structure and the resources and the funding in order to make that happen. Funding from the revenue, that they're making. Yeah. Aravind Eye Institute, which has been running in India for, I think, 30 or 40 years now, essentially does eye care. Eye care meaning cataract surgery.
Okay.
They have 5 or 6 times the productivity of almost any Western world hospital in terms of the number of eye surgeries they can do. But they have a one-for-one model, so it was one of the original ones. So they give free cataract eye surgery to anyone through one door, and they have paying customers through the other. So they're also, as I say, a bit old school in the sense they've been around for a while. Yeah. But I think they've given a ton of people inspiration for the fact that, hey, you can do well at the same time as doing good. But also, as a business itself, the innovation is amazing for them to be able to be that much more productive, therefore have lower costs, therefore be able to provide business that they do to paying customers and non-paying customers.
Awesome. My viewers, they watch this program because they're aspiring social entrepreneurs. I bring on people that have created social enterprises and have them tell not the secrets of the trade, but the main factors that kept them going, that builds a successful social enterprise. After you profiled 1,000 social enterprises, what are the common traits that you see in these social entrepreneurs?
Yeah, another great question. Hard to get 1,000 of them down to a couple key insights, but I'll say a couple things that I think are definitely true, and maybe it builds off of what I just said about the ones that I admire so far. I think the ones that work well are folks that either, just because they're an entrepreneur at heart, they had this in their blood. They probably were, selling lemonade when they were 14 or something, that type of entrepreneur. Those do exist. But quite a few of them have worked in a corporate setting or in a place for a while. And the reason why I think either of those are important, or, they might be, an old guy like me, and they've, been at it for a while. All of them have the trend or the common thread that they understand business well, either intuitively because they were born with it or they've learned it. And so that business sense, I think, is quite critical. They understand how to either sell something, make something, or get a group of people to do something, and that exists with all of the great social enterprises, much like any business. Because I think what they realize very early on is that no amount of good sort of magic dust over top of a bad business model will make it better. Yeah. And so I think that's a common failure of the industry, is where people will almost believe that, hey, I'm doing good, hey, I'm helping the world and the environment, so therefore, buy my product or, give me money. And that might work for a little while, but more often than not, it will just go by the wayside of any other business, that just doesn't have the proper understanding of who's my customer, can I sell them a product, can I manage my staff, can I manage my costs? And so it's a little bit of the boring stuff, but I think that business ingenuity or that business understanding is definitely a thread that runs through the most successful ones. But I don't want to put people off in the sense that they have to have like a business understanding in order to do it, because obviously you can beg, borrow, and steal it from other people. And that's where I think partnerships really help. More often than not, I think you see people teaming up, a group of 1 or 2 people. Unreasonable Institute is 3. Blake's is sort of 1, but I know there's quite a few other senior people behind them. Arvin's a bit more of a family thing that's been going for a while. You'll see that trend that, if you don't have the skill yourself, you have the idea, much like any other business, join with partners, go to an incubator or a camp, learn the skill, and then get going. So I think that answers your question roughly.
Yeah, man, definitely does. Are we leaving anything out, Stephen?
No, I think that's good. I mean, I think it's great what you're doing as well. I think the format, the interview, video, give people a little bit of life, what's going on, and give some inspiration. And hopefully, between us, we can turn over some people. Hopefully, those folks coming out of university today, and they can see this stuff and see a way to do well and do good. If not, it's the guy in the corporate office wondering, hey, what am I doing with my life? Can I step away from this world and do something?
It's never too late, man.
Yeah. Or what's common, actually, Dwight, it's interesting. I didn't mention any of these guys, but they're interesting as well, is a space called entrepreneurship. And so people more often saying, hey, I'm in a senior position within a big company.
Yeah.
I try and change this thing from within. Mm-hmm. And I think it could be a growing trend because there's only so much space for entrepreneurs. Not everyone, wants to take that risk and jump out. But if they're in a big company, they know they have some power. Or some ability to maneuver, why not start their own thing within the company and change it from within? And Danone, the yogurt guys, a great example of a big company that's changed from within. And I think there'll be more and more signs of that. IBM has started to pick up on that. Puma, a bunch of these companies are finding inspiration from the leaders within the company. So I think that's another great space that should be profiled more and more as the industry evolves.
The future doesn't look so bleak after all, man. It's not that bad, huh? Stephen, thanks for coming on the program. Ladies and gentlemen, Stephen King, the founder of socialbusiness.org.